At the height of the Second World War, one of the most famous and successful ships in the Australian Navy, the HMAS Sydney, set out for home after protecting troop ships around Asia. But just 200 kilometres from Western Australia, the Sydney was attacked by a German ship called the Cormorant. Both ships were sunk and more than 700 men died. It was, and still is, the worst naval disaster in Australian history. For almost 70 years, the Sydney and the Cormorant lay undiscovered somewhere in the Indian Ocean, until this moment in 2008.
There it is, that's a 4-inch, that's one of the 4 inches, and it's trained outboard, look at that.
These are the first rough images of the shipwrecks, 2,500 metres below the sea. Now, 8 years later, the researchers have come back for a closer look at the ships. In fact, a much closer look.
We've collected around 500,000 photographs and around 300 hours of high-definition video, and much of that in 3D.
So why all the filming? Well, 2.5 k's is too far below the sea for most people to visit. So instead, the researchers came up with a pretty sophisticated way to bring HMAS Sydney back up onto dry land. This is a full 3D recreation of the HMAS Sydney as it sits on the bottom of the ocean. But being able to create 3D images like this is no easy feat.
The amount of time it would take us to process 500,000 photographs using our conventional techniques, using a standard computer, would take about 1,000 years. So we needed to do something to bring that time down to something achievable.
So they got some help from Magnus.
If you gave all 8 billion people on the planet a hand calculator, it would take them over 10 years to do what Magnus does in a second.
Magnus is a giant supercomputer. In fact, it's the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere. These rows and rows of computers are all linked up, and they work together to stitch information like images from the Sydney together. And now not only do they have a 3D recreation of the ship, all that information could now be used to 3D print a real-life replica too. The HMAS Sydney has had a long, important and tragic story. But now its full story will be easier for the next generation of Australians to learn about.